He is well protected. It's impossible. You'll never make it. Never make it. Ever make it. Never make it. Never make it. I'll never make it. Ever. Don't you see? You can't make it.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Priority Holder. And today I'll be playing Budget Black-Green Self-Mill in the Explorer format. Now, we're so budget in fact that there are no rares in this deck. And the way we achieve that is by building around the card Lotleth Giant. Now, this is a beefy creature that when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage to an opponent equal to the number of creatures in our graveyard. And so the whole gist of the deck is that we have creature-based self-mill to fill up our graveyard and hopefully nuke them with the Lotleth Giant. However, 7 mana is quite a lot, and so we're hoping to cheat it into play with Diregraf Rebirth. This is a 5 mana reanimation spell that notably has flashback, and so we could sort of assemble the combo just by milling ourselves aggressively and landing both the Rebirth and a Lotleth Giant in the graveyard. And notably, this also has some cost reduction built into it if our creatures die. And so that's sort of like the main combo plan, is to whammy them with the huge Lotleth Giant. And the rest of the deck is set up to enable that. So we have self-milling creatures like Glowspore Shaman, Satyr Wayfinder, Blanchwood Prowler. These two are incredibly strong because they can give us card advantage by putting lands into our hand. And in the 1-drop slot, we have Gnawing Vermin and Supplier. Also note that we have some on-theme removal with Necrotic Wound. That's creatures in our graveyard based. Now, I love graveyard strategies and self-mill, and I have a non-budget version that's built around Fiend Artisan and company, as well as another version with a huge twist that you can check out if you're interested. Now, last thing I want to mention before we jump into the games is that there's a plan B of Molderhulk in this deck, just a huge creature to beat down with. This gets a cost reduction for the creatures in our graveyard, and when it enters the battlefield, returns a land from our graveyard to play. Now, this forms like a really cool loop with Memorial to Folly. This is something you did in like the old days of Standard and Arena, and this can sacrifice to return a creature from our graveyard to our hand, and so together they can recur each other or help recur other things, and just becomes a very recursive, hard to deal with threat. And yeah, that's the deck. Let's see how it goes in some games. Alright, so looks like a great hand. Definitely snap this off, especially with turn 1 Stitcher Supplier. Let's see what we hit. And the nice thing with this deck is because we have so many Satyr Wayfinder effects, we're able to just pick up lands, no trouble at all, while contributing to our game plan. Yeah, so you can see here we just grab land number 3, and we're off to the races. Blue-white land from the opponent, and yeah, could be like spirits, could also be control. Just slam another Satyr Wayfinder, keep the lands flowing. And yeah, I mean, you could just see the power of Satyr Wayfinder here, just filling up our graveyard, grabbing lands. Just a very, very strong card. Already at 6 creatures in the yard, not bad at all. Yeah, we'll just keep, maybe just kill them with 1/1s, who knows. Play Glowspore. Now, the tough part is Glowspore is not like Satyr Wayfinder. It puts the land on top, so you'll see me declining those every time. Almost every time. Another Satyr Wayfinder, don't mind if we do. Go ahead and grab the untapped land. We have plenty of colors at this point, so let's see what the opponent does. Passes. That 2-mana Molderhulk's looking pretty nice, though. The opponent just takes the damage. Attempt to, yeah. So they go ahead and absorb Molderhulk, gain a chunk of life, but you know, it just feeds our graveyard, which we're big fans of anyway. Teferi Hero Dominaria, very strong card. That's the avatar I'm using. All right, so they untap 2 lands. So this is a risky thing here. I just send exactly enough power to take down Teferi. Often it's better to send more in case they remove one of them and then they untap with it and they keep drawing cards. You know, so this could have got ugly, but fortunately it works out for us. Teferi gets taken out, and you notice that I do have a Diregraf Rebirth that I could fire off, but it just seemed almost certain they had a counter they were holding up. So I decided just to hold it because they're going to have to answer our creatures on board. Like, we don't have to, like, play into their counter spells at this point. Stitcher Supplier's too small time at this point. We want, like, any of our larger creatures. Okay, opponent fires off a March. Sure, that's fine. And they're still taking 4 damage, so decide at this point to fire off the one in the graveyard. It's making use of our mana, and they just have to have it or they lose right here. So fire off Diregraf Rebirth, and they have Make Disappear. So what we're going to try and do is just eat through their counters. Nice thing is Diregraf Rebirth has flashback, so unless they have exile counters, we're going to give them a lot to deal with. So Wandering Emperor comes in here to save them from lethal damage. Can't feel good to -2 on a Stitcher Supplier, but it's gonna do the job and stabilize them at 3. And now I'm on the plan of just running them out of counters. So attempt to rebirth Lotleth Giant again, and they hit absorb. So opponent's actually going up on life despite our best efforts, but we're able to add some more power to the board, and we'll decline the land once again. But opponent's in trouble because if we resolve either a Lotleth Giant or a Diregraf Rebirth, they just lose, and they don't have like a card draw engine. Like they, we took down Teferi. They don't have like Search for Us contest, something like that. Memory Deluge. Okay, so they channel Iganjo, take down our 3/1, block down one of our 1/1s. We knock them to 4. And unfortunately are just 1 mana short of firing off the 2 discounted rebirths that we have access to that could have just ended it right here. So, but it just seems more like inevitability at this point. Like, we have so many, like, every spell we have kills them. So it seems like we're in the driver's seat at this point with the million of them to cast. So we've, go ahead and try again with the Lotleth Giant. And another counter. So opponent will not give up. Now them cycling Censor is a good sign. They probably realize that they're not likely to be able to profit off that. They're doing some deck thinning right now. We're a budget deck. We have tons of basic lands, so no strip mine for them. Okay, so they attack in. Decide just to, because it has Vigilance, it's sort of annoying, so just throw them under the bus. Alright, so is this the moment of truth? I mean, even if this is a counter, we're just going to get them eventually. And they let one through, and that's all we needed. On to the next one. Now as we move into the next game, please Abyssinian Priest the like button, comment, and subscribe. It supports the channel and helps me know what the people want. Thank you. Now unfortunately we're mulliganing. Keep untap Black Source and a tap land so we can hopefully get the train going. Would love an untapped green source though. Decide that's more important to get the land searching ones online. The big millers like Satyr Wayfinder. That's why I didn't opt for the turn 1 Vermin. And then it looks like it's just going to be that kind of a game. Mulligan into a miss with the Satyr Wayfinder, which is sort of difficult to do. And we actually really needed the land that time. We don't always need it, but that time we really did. So we do have Tangled Florahedron, but okay, so Jungle Hollow is nice, but getting a land with Satyr Wayfinder there would have helped us unmulligan and recover from like the Thought Seize a little bit. So now Grim Dancer is not one you see across the table too often. I'm surprised that they didn't choose Lifelink as one of the modes on it, but alright, so opponent just passes, maybe holding up Castle Locthwain, hard to say. But you could see this is where the budget mana base is coming to bite us with all these tap lands, just desperation for our colors. Like, we are eventually, basically on the strength of Blanchwood Prowler and Satyr Wayfinder, like digging our way back into this, Opt for the no attack. Now I think I make a pretty big mistake here. So I go for just a sort of straightforward block, and then just sort of open ourselves up to removal, and they go ahead and kill a blocker. And so I think that was just a prime time to just block with every creature. If we actually wanted to get the Grim Dancer on the board, we had to commit to it. And so that sort of half-hearted attempt just sort of backfired. Decide that there's not really hope of blocking at this point, so go ahead and fire off Diregraf Rebirth on a Lotleth Giant. Now, our Undergrowth was 10 as we were looking, but it's only going to deal 9. Well, would have dealt 9. They make a small error by killing it in response to the trigger, thus loading up our graveyard a bit more. But now all of a sudden things make sense when a Grey Merchant hits the side of their battlefield, and it really is disappointing that the Grim Dancer is still around, because that's a two extra life point swing. Alright, so they attack it with everything. Opt for the no blocks at all, and they play Murderous Rider. Okay, so we do draw a land, and you can see we have 10 in the graveyard, so we can deal 9, and I make a gameplay error here. What I should have done is attacked with all creatures. They probably block one, and it's going to be a net neutral life for them, but put one more creature in our graveyard. Play the land, lethal Lotleth. Instead, we make that mistake and leave the door open for a Grey Merchant to kill us. So that's unfortunate. That was a very winnable one with a critical mistake early and then a game-losing mistake at the end. So we'll see if we can recover from that. Bitter reunion from the opponent, and it seems like they're on some sort of Izzet Spells, maybe Izzet Phoenix build over there, trying to turbo through their deck. Okay, Stitcher Supplier. Opponent just passes. Blanchwood Prowler, see what we can get. And we miss on lands. Luckily we still have a land. But those Lotleth Giants right now are really stranded in our hand. Okay, opponent misses a land drop and didn't cast anything, so it's very curious about what their hand is, and they decide at this point to fire off the shock. They probably just want to profitably use their mana and fill their graveyard potentially. Glowspore Shaman. It is a consideration to put a land on top here. Decide it's just not worth it with how much more self-mill we want to play. And knowing that most of our deck is lands anyway, so, or much of it. Alright, Tolarian Terror would be somewhat of a problem, except we already have a charged up Necrotic Wound, so it just turns out it will be not a problem at all. We just use our very efficient custom removal for this deck and are able to take care of Tolarian Terror and play a rat for good measure. So the Lotleth Giants are getting charged up pretty nice, but we're just nowhere near casting them. Hoping to... Oh, and then there's Brotherhood's End, so they're getting charged up even more. So we're already up to 12, and we get a few more mill hits, so now we're up to 13. If we could ever cast one, or play a Diregraf Rebirth. However, that was a pretty nice draw right there, because we can sacrifice Memorial to Folly to put a creature into hand, and we're going to go ahead and grab a Molderhulk, which is at full discount right now. So we're doing the classic Memorial to Folly Molderhulk loop. Go ahead and play Glowspore just to charge up the graveyard even more, not put anything on top. And Molderhulk is going to come out as a 6/6 and return Memorial to Folly to play, so we can just keep looping them that way. Now it is a little concerning that a Crackling Drake's there. We're not going to be able to block that. We have no removal, and they're charging up its power quite quickly. Alright, Blitz of the Thunder Raptor is basically the spell equivalent of our removal spell we've been playing. And they go ahead and smack this for 7, so if they have like a shock, like we're pretty close to dying. Another creature there was pretty clutch. Alright, another Diregraf Rebirth. A land is very helpful because we're really trying to get to 7 mana for either Lotleth or Diregraf Rebirth, so we're holding tight but bracing ourselves. Okay, another Blitz is pretty rough for us. And then another removal spell. So they are nearly at lethal right now with 14 damage. Do they have anything else? No. So a Consider there might have killed us. So we barely stabilize. And then we rip land number 7 off the top and could just slam Lotleth Giant for the win. So that was pretty clutch. They had us dead, but we managed to pull that one out. On to the next one. Okay, try land from the opponent. We play our tap land, go. Alright, so Aether Theorist. Not one you see very often, but just screams energy strategy. Why else? Because why else would you be playing it? So, and there's usually 2 main flavors of energy decks. There's the aggressive ones, and then there's the Aetherworks Marvel ones. And this is seeming like a defensive, get a ton of energy for Aetherworks Marvel deck. So that's sort of my read on the situation. Able to bluff and attack through right here. You know, figured it would discount our Molderhulks, so weren't really sad about either outcome, whether they blocked or not. Okay, so opponent gets to scry a little bit. Fishing for something. Alright, Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. Building up the energy bank. Alright, crashing with our creatures. They're very conservative, not blocking, just trying to keep their scryers in play. And we're just trying to keep chaining lands, you know, just keep making our land drops. Go ahead and play a Vermin and then a tap land to follow up. So the Memorial to Folly is pretty nice. It combos with Molderhulk. They're almost at maximum discount, so we'll be able to start slamming just 6/6s and see if those can close the game for us. Don't even necessarily need to play a Lotleth Giant to win. Okay, Valakut Awakening, they're trying to... So they end up pitching their whole hand, just looking for new stuff. Alright, Aether Hub. Pass. And we're just going to keep smashing in. So opponent finally decides to block. They end up blocking little creatures. We're actually okay with that because we wanted to discount our Molderhulks. And because those creatures died, now we could play our... well, we could play out a lot of stuff right now. Stitcher Supplier to start off with. Trying to juice up the graveyard a little bit more for like a Diregraf Rebirth win. And we're able to play some Molderhulks here. Full discount and pulling lands from our graveyard into play. So feels pretty great. We're really pressuring them on board now. And have just accelerated our way up to 7 mana. Alright, but here's the Aetherworks Marvel. The whole thing their deck is built around. And they're able to fire it off. And they hit Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. So this is what their deck is designed to do. To turbo out Aetherworks Marvel and slam an Ulamog. So they exile both of our Molderhulks we just barely got out. But you could see me doing some graveyard counting and calculating here. And decide the best course of action is to attack with all of them. Because either they don't block and their life total goes lower. Or they do block and we juice up the graveyard. And discount Diregraf Rebirth because it's discounted 1 generic per creature that has died this turn under our control. So Lotleth Giant is going to remove itself from the graveyard, so right now it's only going to deal 13, but because Diregraf Rebirth was so heavily discounted, we just fire it off again and get a second one for the kill right after we get Ulamogged. So feels pretty good, and we jump into the next game. Alright, Llanowar Elves. Could be elves, could be some sort of green ramp deck. We'll have to see what the follow-up is. Alright, Polukranos. That's pretty scary. Turn 2 Polukranos is pretty tough. Luckily we have like 1 million creatures to, at least for the time being, to chump block it. but we're already sort of quickly on the back foot. We're trying to charge up those necrotic wounds as fast as we can. And 1 creature in exchange for 4 life seems pretty good, especially because it feeds into our plan. Boosts up our necrotic wounds also. So play Satyr Wayfinder here, and we don't mill any creatures, which is pretty tough because just milling 1 more creature would allow us to exile the Old Growth Troll right now, which has trample and recursion kind of value built into it. So it seems like the best we can do is chump the Polukranos again, setting up Necrotic Wound. And then we see Karn the Great Creator hit the battlefield, and you know what those wish boards are full of is Graveyard Hate. So then they slam Tormod's Crypt. So we're sort of forced to fire off a Necrotic Wound before it's completely nerfed by Tormod's Crypt. But this is a nightmare scenario. This Karn the Great Creator is very strong. And the problem is that the opponent, we're the ones under pressure right now, and so they can just hold us hostage with Tormod's Crypt. So we're going to just try and keep playing our game plan, but they're just going to crack it when the moment we seem dangerous at all. Alright, so they're going to pull an equipment out, Shadow Spear, and that was just possibly the most annoying thing they could pull, because that is going to boost Polukranos' toughness 1 out of reach of our Necrotic Wounds. Now I could have fired it off in response to try and kill Polukranos, but then they would have just used Tormod's Crypt. And there is an argument to doing that just to get the Crypt out of the way. But that's actually a really good draw, a discounted Molderhulk, which can actually fend off Polukranos. So the opponent decides they've seen enough, and they exile our graveyard, and you can see me just agonizing here that their creature's toughness is just 1 out of reach Necrotic Wound, because that would have been a nice way to snipe it. There is something to be said to sniping the Llanowar Elf just to cut down their mana. And maybe that would have been good, because now they slam Glorious Sunrise, you could start getting value out of the various modes there. So they plus Karn for no value, and are able to boost their creature, and decide just to, it's going to be too much of a problem, and just a double block here. Now I'm not sure if there's some larger plan at play that I'm missing, or if that was just a misclick, but they leave Molderhulk alive. You think they would have liked to have killed that, but either way, we'll take whatever help we can get at this point. Now at this point I decide to take out Llanowar Elves to try and trim down the mana, but it would have been much better last turn because then that enchantment would not have been down, but it feels pretty good right now. We take down Karn, we take down Llanowar Elves, we're slowly building up our graveyard again, and we're just struggling to actually mill creatures at this point, so the Necrotic Wound is still fairly benign. Alright, Glorious Sunrise causes that land to add triple mana, and then Nightmare Scenario, Kiora Behemoth Beckoner. Very strong card in their deck because it lets them untap Nykthos and also this temporarily cool boosted land. Here comes Cavalier of Thorns. Very annoying for this deck to deal with because it's going to mill them and put a land into play, which of course is Nykthos. But if it dies, then they just put something on top of their deck, sort of like a Noxious Revival. And there's a lot of nasty things in there we don't want to see coming back out. So, but at the same time, Kiora is a problem. Anyway, so feeling desperate here, but the opponents played it really well. Like pulling out the Tormod's Crypt, nuking our graveyard, has made our conditional removal just not good enough. If we could have used Necrotic Wound on the Cavalier, we could have really trimmed down their devotion and then denied them the sort of death trigger. So it feels like things are slipping away from us. This opponent charges up Nykthos for green, plays another Cavalier. And I moved to triple speed here because it takes me a while to see it, but the opponent has the win here. They get a second Nykthos with the Cavalier, and they're able to boost up their Lair of the Hydra so huge to just one-shot us, and that's it. Alright, so that's budget black-green self-mill, and yeah, we did okay. We went 3-2, and honestly it should have been 4-1. Made some pretty critical errors against Mono Black Devotion. That was a very winnable game. But the deck's super fun, especially considering that there's no rares. It seems like it really packs a punch. As far as upgrade paths, well, one thing you can do is touch up the mana base with untapped lands, the rare lands. That would go a long way. We also, if you're using rares, can companion Gigantha for free, so there's that. And this wasn't a strategy I paid a lot of attention to. I was mostly honed in on Fiend Artisans and Glorgoyfs, but I think there's really something here with like the Turbo Lotleth Giant plan. So there is we can supercharge the deck with even like higher creature density by including MDFC creatures, but those weaken Satyr Wayfinder and Blanchwood Prowler, so I'm not sure what quite the right balance is, but I think you could add a few more of them just to increase the creature density. But this is a super fun deck. Highly recommend trying it out. It's easy on the wild cards. And anyway, let me know what your favorite self-milling creature is. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day.